second day.
School management.
We are having two experts over here. I would request them, to confine themselves to about 5 to 7 minutes because other two gentlemen are not there, so you are blessed with a couple of more minutes. I'll start with you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great delight and pride to be part of the Global Knowledge Sharing Platform. Key vistas of the Education Summit session are very absorbing, and the key focus areas on how to move a country to next level in the education arena, award for innovation excellence in education, conclave on skill development in the education sphere, an exhibition for showcasing best practice in teaching, training, learning, and being well addressed. Every aspect of this forum addressed the right progress in the educational field, which is the need of the hour. Future belongs to people who are situationally brilliant. Situational brilliance is going to be determine the success of future. And we need to have diligent competencies and be best in practices which force the best results. Otherwise, it's like praying for good health without exercising. This is a digital era. We need to accelerate with speed and right direction. It is the direction of intelligence that determines the pace of our growth. When Steve Jobs was in school, he was fascinated by an article titled Efficiency of Locomotion. In journal American Scientist, it read, in terms of output, eagles rank highest and human beings rank the least along with tortoise and snails. Eagle used minimum energy and maximum locomotion. Human efficiency peaked after a bicycle was given to him. Human efficiency peaked through tools. Inventing and using the right tools will optimize performance. This made Steve Jobs hungry for innovation and gifted mankind with greatest tool. One question we need to ask, are we using the right technology and the latest technology as well? Digital learning is not meant to replace traditional learning. It empowers us to accelerate the right direction of educational growth. IoT has migrated to a third platform world over. IoT now pick up momentum, big data, mobility, cloud and services. While the prominence of big data is understood beyond business mission and criticality, it's important to accept cloud will become the next movers and shakers for the IoT of things. While many argue that public cloud will be contributing significantly to the transformation of IoT, it's imperative we accept private cloud will continue to occupy the center stage for some more time. The way ahead will be connect, collaborate, and commit. The two big retail giants of the world, Walmart and the Home Depot, handles more than 1 million customers' transactions per hour and import this information into databases estimated to contain more than 2.5 petabytes of data, which is absolutely safe and sound. India is fast emerging as high-growth market for cloud services, led thus far by the private and segment. However, there is a huge potential for adoption of public cloud services, which are in the early stage of market development and would need greater thrust from players such as IBM, SoftLayer, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google, NTT Communication, and Rackspace. To win enterprise trust and confidence for moving the workloads of the public cloud, big data is everywhere, and there is almost an urgent need to collect and preserve whatever data is being generated. For the fear of missing out on something important, there's a huge amount of data floating around. What we do with it all matters right now. This is why big data analytics is in the frontiers of IT. Big data analytics has become crucial as it aids in improving business, decision makings, and providing the biggest edge over the competitors. It applies for organizations as well, professional in the analytic domain. I have one request to the dignitaries and people around here. Standardization of syllabus across universities. Our syllabus must be in sync with industry needs in computer engineering along with algorithm design and C++ programming, and we need to have information security, soft computing, cloud computing, and multi-core system programming, and everything that the current industry demands. We need to make our students employable. Employability is the biggest challenge we face because of the way the curriculum is designed. Please help our students employable and transform into global citizens. Bill Gates always felt change is the only constant in life, but people always fear change. Before, people feared electricity when it was invented, didn't they? A lot of planning has been going on, but it's time for execution. I always insist on consortium with governance. If we could form a consortium that takes us forward, we are sure we are on the right path of phenomenal growth. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Learning management solutions, capturing data in terms of grade books, etc. But what's been the challenge for educational institutes is, the whole effort, time, money that is required to implement these technical solutions. And by the time that you've implemented, right, either your use case for which you implemented a technology is not widely adopted in your institution, or technology has been outdated itself, right? That's the nature of technology overall. Now, what cloud is actually helping organizations and institutes do is to look at, number one, it as an operating cost, right? So you don't need to invest upfront in capacity for implementing a solution. Now, in turn, what that helps institutions do is to do pilots or proof of concepts incrementally. Again, the consequence is that you test out use cases, right? Is this technology, or is this style of learning, or is this style of delivering teaching going to help my students? If it doesn't, I don't have sunk cost, I move on to another technology and try it out, right? No solution would ever be perfect. So I think that's the biggest impact that cloud has had. It's enabling institutions to look at applications on a standalone basis, experiment, look at a use case. If it's being adopted, scale it immediately. Right. The other thing which should also be looked at in this topic is the concept of mobile. Right? Because of cloud applications, you being able to deliver information from these applications to mobile devices is also accelerated. Right? The outcome of this is you're able to now deliver nuggets of information to your learners from these applications, right? What we're now calling as micro-learning. Now, if you look at mobile devices, when do you pick up the phone? When do you use an application, right? When you get a call, when you get an SMS, when you get a WhatsApp message, right? So if you look at the usage of mobile phones, it's predominantly notification-based. Right? Mobile phones are notification devices. So now with these cloud applications, you're able to push informations to students, thereby increasing the interaction between the teacher and the student, right? Sort of like, I've released a new test paper that you need to look at. Or before coming in for the class tomorrow, the application is sending out notifications, read up on this chapter. So what that helps do is to bring in the concept of flipped classrooms, right? The learners are going to read up content before coming in class and have more quality interactions with the teacher or trainer in the classroom. Now, if you look at the consequence again of the cloud, because of the proliferation of applications, the amount of data which is getting created is enormous, right? The gentleman before me did talk about a lot of data being collected and the need for analyzing it. I think the challenge is not the capture of data. Yes, because of mobile and cloud application that has accelerated, but this has been there for a long time now. If you go through the details in terms of what a teacher needs to do to deliver training or teaching, right, there are lots of tasks involved. And predominantly, there's a lot of administrative stuff, right? And then preparation for a class, followed by analysis of what a student has done, and then the cycle repeats itself. Now, what big data is already helping and will evolve over a period of time is to help create actionable insights from data. So it's not only about coming out with reports, what's been the attendance or what kind of content has been consumed, but predict eventual outcomes that could come and predict what is the actionable outcome that needs to be done. For example, I was reading an article about how data from different classes are being collated to come out with an action. For example, this particular college had students from different countries in the class, right? And they were taking language help sessions. Obviously, their performance in the English language was not great, but then they realized they had mathematics skills, but they were not able to perform in the mathematics class because the problem statements in English were too complicated for them to understand, right? So this is the correlation of data that is happening across different classes, which again, big data is enabling to provide insights. Now, the other thing is the big data and analytics is not only for the learners, right? It is also for the teachers, right? Just like every learner has his own strengths, weaknesses, and passion for learning, right? The same applies for the teacher. Right? Based on the performance of a class, correlating it to another similar class being taught by some other teacher, looking at past performance, you can actually provide training for the teacher itself in terms of, how do you communicate, how do you take a class, or do some concepts need to be drilled down deeper, right? So again, actionable insights. And it's a combination of these two, which is actually disrupting the overall interaction between students and teachers. So that's our point of view on what's happening in the big data and cloud space. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon to you all. I'm going to be speaker as well as the moderator for this particular session. I've been listening to all the speakers for past couple of days. Something that struck me, I'm going to highlight that particular point. Being last session, I'm also going to be a little bit provocative so that you go back with some sort of thought processes. We have been talking about the Western culture, Stanford universities, and then whatever is happening in the West, We have not talked about what is happening in the East. East has contributed a whole lot, from Japan to Korea, Malaysia, they have done a wonderful job at it, And part of the thing, is that why am I bringing in the Japanese culture, is that some sort of a synergy between the Eastern philosophies, Nagoya University, the professor is supreme. The industry comes later on. So if suppose the industrialist is going to come, he is going to ask for a time from the professor. Do we have that type of a respect in my country? We are going, begging, for some sort of a funding. We are saying, that we must have industry tie-ups and so on and so forth, Industry is not feeling the need for it, We kept on talking about compatibility between the two. For example, R&D, which particular industry is doing R&D? Very, very few. You talk about Infosys, you talk about TCS, they're not doing any sort of a high-end type of R&D. They're doing body shopping, Fine, it has got its own merit. It provides my student the necessity, to get employed. So my big urge, is that we need to really look inward. We got to figure it out how our faculty is going to be sort of respected in the society at large, and then I think things will start happening. The second part, which I kind of was a little bit concerned, is that we didn't talk about the government departments. I was a part of National Knowledge Commission on the engineering education, and we gave some recommendations, to Sam Pitroda. And one of the things, that we were talking about, is that just like MBBS, why don't we have just Bachelor of Engineering, period? You teach him everything, from metallurgy to the chemical to mechanical to computer science to whatever. After all, the doctors don't go for the specialization, at the bachelor's level, right? So why not in engineering? There are some issues, and obviously we are stuck up with that, But when we start talking about this particular skill, now the skill sets that are required, in the hardcore engineering, they are more or less identical. Fine, you have got automation, and then you've got robots, which are controlling all the automobile factories and so on and so forth, But we need to essentially look at what sort of skill sets are required in the computer science and engineering. Right now we were talking about big data and cloud computing, right? As a matter of fact, one of the critical area, the data is generated because there are so many sensors, I have got automobile data, and it is voluminous type of a data. We're talking about petabytes of data, from terabytes now. In 3 years, we are talking about a petabyte, Some data you need to cull it out, because that is going to be relevant data. There would be a lot of data which is ridiculously, it's a waste, it's a garbage, So how you will be able to sort it out, You need to have inductive as well as descriptive type of a statistical tools, Suppose if I tell you, and I believe, some of you who are in the higher academic institutions, you would concur with me, it is very difficult to find out mathematics with statistics as a specialization to join. There are, the IITs are crying right now, that they don't have statistics as a statistics speciality, specialization, they are not able to find it, So when you talk about analytics, how are you going to do the analytics, You need somebody, who has got a trained eyes, for doing this. And this is something, which is very important if you are going to develop the business intelligence and so on and so forth. Part of the skill sets, we have been talking about it, Previous generation, let us say 50 years ago, we used to have typically a pyramid that everybody knows about it. One engineer, right? 4 diploma holders and 8 ITA type of people, Now the pyramid has inverted. There is only one person, who is handling the jobs. There are 8 engineers whom we don't know what to do with it. And when we talk about this particular aspect, I think this point was brought in by quite a few earlier speakers, that 2 weeks ago, the IITs, NITs and triple ITs, they have declared 5,500 vacancies. And they want to go one more round, Is engineering losing the sheen? And if engineering is losing the sheen, then why are we pushing it unilaterally from our side, Is there a real need for it or not, The second aspect of it is faculty. Everybody has said, the quality and quantity is not matching right now. There are not enough faculty members, More importantly, what do you want to do with this particular faculty, This is especially in the computer science and electronics communication, this is a very, very rapidly changing dynamic field, knowledge base is changing, So what sort of a motivation my faculty having in learning new things? Because now I'm pushing him, So even in your big data, what I had identified, saying, that the core of computer science and engineering, let us say data structures, algorithms, coding, compiler designs, etc. Now they have to be taken over by big data, analytics, mobile computing, cloud computing, and so on and so forth, What do we do with the fundamentals, As a matter of fact, I on my own institute, I have got a lot of tie-ups, I have got IBM on my campus, I have got Microsoft on my campus, I have got HCL, I have got a National Instruments, I have got a Texas Instrument. So I'm okay with it, basically because I have realized, that I don't have everything, that the industry is needing tomorrow. So they come induct the faculty development programs on my campus. I send my people. So sending them over there to the industry, for the internship is one way of familiarizing my own faculty, to do this type of a thing. So we have got very complex type of a situation. On one side, all of us are excited, make in India, and then we need to make big impact and so on and so forth. On the other hand, we have got this type of a contradictory type of a thing, there is no enough faculty, there are mushrooming engineering colleges, there are so many seats that are going vacant even in the high-end type of engineering institutes, So we have to really think about it, whether we are ready for this type of a rapid change, or would we need some time, to absorb this particular thing and go systematically. We talked about the cost-efficient type of a technologies that have been developed. In the past 20, 25 years, the cost of the desktops, and the laptops, and then iPads and so on and so forth, it has come down dramatically. So that particular thing can be used, What Suri was showing, as a simulation type of a tools, they are also available currently, So the dynamic teaching is also a possibility, you know. So this particular thing has happened in a big way, you know. The smartphones that we are talking about, we hardly use the phones, you know, for a conventional sense, you know, like for calling somebody over the telephone. You know, that's just about 25%, 30%. Rest everything is camera, music, you know, then recording, photography and whatnot, you know. So I just had a sort of a curious thought, you know, what Alexander Bell, you know, and Thomas Edison would have done in today's world. Because they were the pioneers in all these technology revolutions, right? You know, I mean, the electronic communication and so on and so forth. So how they would have adopted into all these things, you know. Technology is available, technology is cheap, and we are using some of this, you know, in the classroom. But there are problems, you know, saying, you know, that what is the golden mean, you know, where I would be able to strike this particular golden mean, you know, and whether the student is going to absorb it, whether I have got a qualified faculty to teach them whatever it is. So adjunct professorships, you know, the industry people coming and taking the courses. Then again, the academic institution, they have got a problem, you know, because most of the cases now you are saying without PhD you cannot enter into the academic disciplines and so on and so forth, you know. So there are contradictions aplenty, and these types of contradictions, you know, we will have to deal with, tackle with, and move forward, you know. The opportunity that ELETS provides, you know, for us to meet at least once or twice in a year, you know, it is really excellent, you know, because people with like-minded thoughts, you know, they come across, you know, we get to know across the borders, you know, what is happening everywhere, you know. So from Bangladesh to Ottawa in Canada, you know, and then we had a wonderful time over here. I would like to thank ELETS for this. And I wish all of you, you know, would be able to put in your two-bit thought worth, you know, and then come across, you know, and probably contact ELETS, you know, about what you felt like, you know. Thank you, and very good evening.
So, Professor Gokhale, I think we have enough time in hand, and if there are any questions, any comments, suggestions, if the audience would like to come up with anything, now is the time.
I am Verma, Vice Chancellor, ISECT University. Over the last 2 days, and particularly in this session, one thing is very clear, that the technology is changing at a very fast rate, and the driving seat is with the industry. Now, if they are wanting that the advantage of the new technology or emerging technologies to come to institute to help improving the standard, improving the teaching learning system, then there are two aspects to it which I would like to bring it out. One is who will standardize it for the academy, because the industry will look it from the business point of view, is one aspect. Another is the faculty's capability and faculty's status to take up these new technology, which is changing every day. There is a faculty crunch, and we have not standardized the faculty's competence also. So these two things put together creates a lot of problem of standardization. Standardization in education is, I think, the biggest problem now, which has resulted, especially in engineering, it has resulted in diminishing interest. In a state like Madhya Pradesh, almost 50% seats are vacant. And there is, it is because of this, what is happening is, since the engineering institutes want their seats to be filled up because that is their bread and butter. So the inferior quality is also coming with a lot of compromises to engineering institute. So I think this has to be addressed not only by the government and engineering institute, but industry also is a partner to it. So they have to look into this standardization of the application. Not that anything coming and they want it to pass it on to the institutes because they are large in number and they look for business in that. So I think industry also should participate, and when we come to such forum, I think we should look into this aspect also. Thank you.
I agree.
Okay, sir, do you want to make any concluding remarks about the session?
No, I think we have said all.
Okay, can I request Professor Gokhale to honor our delegates, a certificate for Dr. R.S.K. Lakshmana Prabhu, Co-Chairman, PSNA College of Engineering and Technology. Round of applause, please. Can we have a memento for Mr. Manish Sharma, CRO Viz IQ? And can I request Mr. Manish Sharma to please give Professor S.S. Gokhale, Director, L&M Institute of Information Technology, his certificate. Round of applause, please. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and your insights. Can we have a group photograph, please? So with this, we wrap up the higher education track in this hall. We still have a session going on in the other hall on the school education track. And at